My name is Amara Lysol, and at 28, I've built a quiet life for myself in Charlotte, North Carolina. I work as a graphic designer from a small loft apartment downtown, a space filled with bright sketches, coffee mugs, and the hum of my laptop long past midnight. On the surface, it looks steady, the kind of independence I dreamed about when I was younger, but family ties have a way of tugging at you, even when you try to outgrow them. My sister Serena lives only a few blocks away. She's 30, just 2 years older, but the distance between us has always felt wider. Growing up, we fought for the same scarce affection, our mother's tired smiles after double shifts, scraps of attention when our father had already vanished from the picture. I learned to push forward, to survive by building my own path. Serena, though, carried the weight differently, and too often it turned into resentment. To anyone watching, we look like sisters who stayed close, meeting for coffee on weekends, swapping recipes, even taking turns hosting dinner. We laugh in public, trade stories like nothing's wrong, but under the surface is a quiet strain neither of us names. I know she envies how I worked my way into a stable career. I know she still feels left behind. And I, though I rarely admit it, still long for her to see me as more than a rival. I tell myself the tension is manageable. That shared blood is reason enough to keep showing up. Still, every conversation feels like walking a narrow bridge, one misstep away from dropping into old wounds. One night, long after I thought the house was asleep, I learned just how fragile that bridge really was. The night was quiet, the kind of silence that settles heavy after a long day. Serena had insisted on staying over after dinner, saying she didn't feel like driving back to her apartment. I didn't mind at first. It had been a while since we'd spent a night under the same roof. I went to bed early, but sometime after midnight, I stirred awake, thirsty, padding softly into the kitchen. I stopped when I heard her voice. Serena was sitting at my kitchen table, her phone pressed tight to her ear, whispering in a rush of Spanish. At first I thought I'd misheard, but then the words cut through the stillness. Plan, documentos, keep her out. My heart gave a sharp jolt. I stayed in the hallway, hidden by the shadows, every nerve awake. Serena had taken Spanish years ago in college. She'd teased me back then for fumbling through a few phrases, never knowing I kept studying quietly long after she quit. Online courses, language apps, late nights repeating words to myself until they stuck. It had been my private accomplishment. And now, that secret was the only reason I understood what she was saying. Her tone was urgent, almost conspiratorial, and the pauses told me she wasn't just gossiping. She was coordinating something, and whoever was on the other end wasn't speaking English either. My throat went dry. Why would my own sister be whispering like this in my kitchen, in the middle of the night? As if she didn't want me to hear the phrases replayed in my head, the plan, the documents. Keep her out. I stepped back before she could notice me, retreating to my room as quietly as I'd come. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, every word echoing like a warning. Was it paranoia to think those whispers were about me, or the first crack in a secret I wasn't supposed to hear by morning? The night felt almost like a dream I wasn't sure I'd had. The kitchen smelled of brewed coffee, and Serena was already at the table, smiling like the sun had risen just for her. A neat white bag sat between us, the kind from the bakery down the street. She pushed it toward me with an exaggerated flourish. "Croissants and coffee for my favorite sister," she said, her voice light, almost too light. I sat down slowly, my mind replaying the whispers I'd overheard only hours before. Her cheeriness felt staged, every word a little too polished. I tore off a corner of the pastry, chewing without tasting, waiting for her to show her hand. She didn't make me wait long. "So," she began, resting her chin in her palm, "I found something amazing for you. A design retreat. Abroad." She paused for effect, letting the word linger. "Spain. Isn't that exciting?" I blinked at her, caught off guard. "Spain." "Yes." She rushed on, eyes bright. workshops, networking, even a showcase for your portfolio. It's all lined up. Perfect timing, too. You've been working so hard. Amara, you deserve this. Her voice dripped with sweetness, but I felt my chest tighten. A trip abroad, arranged without me knowing flights, schedules, strangers. She spoke like everything was already decided. I don't remember signing up for anything, I said carefully. You didn't have to. I've got contacts. Remember? They'll take care of you. She waved her hand like it was a gift I should be grateful for. All you have to do is pack. I nodded, forcing a smile to match hers. But my thoughts churned. Serena never did anything without an angle, and last night's whispers came back with a vengeance plan. Documents. Keep her out. Was this trip really an opportunity or a way to erase me from something bigger? As I stirred cream into my coffee, Serena kept talking about the so-called retreat, her voice warm and persuasive. I nodded along, but inside my mind was spinning. I had heard her words the night before, not just sounds, but meaning. And that changed everything. It took me back to the first time I'd felt invisible because of language. In high school, when some of my friends switched to Spanish during lunch, laughter spilling out like secrets, I'd smiled dumbly, pretending it didn't sting. Later, at my first design job, coworkers from different backgrounds would joke in Spanish across the office. They weren't unkind, but I hated the way it made me feel always on the edge, never inside. That was when I started learning on my own. I bought cheap grammar books, downloaded free apps, scribbled vocabulary lists late at night. At first, it was clumsy rolling R's that wouldn't come, verbs that tangled in my throat. But slowly, piece by piece, I began to understand. By the time I was 23, I could follow conversations on the bus, catch jokes on TV shows, even chat politely with clients who slipped into Spanish without realizing it. Still, I never told Serena. She would have laughed, called me obsessive, maybe even accused me of trying to compete with her. Now, sitting across from her, I felt the secret I'd guarded for years shift into something else, a weapon, sharp and quiet. The words she whispered last night came back with clarity. El plan, documentos. Keep her out. That wasn't about some design retreat. It was about the estate, our uncle's property in the mountains, the one that had been a point of quiet speculation ever since his health began to fail. I thought of Uncle Robert's warm smile, his habit of scribbling notes about family memories in the margins of old books. He had hinted once that he wanted the cabin to stay with someone who would value it, not sell it off. If Serena was plotting around that promise, then the retreat wasn't generosity, it was exile. I sipped my coffee, keeping my face calm, but inside, the decision weighed heavy. If knowledge is power, when should I reveal I understand every word? Later that afternoon, Serena left her coffee half-finished on the table and disappeared into the bathroom with her phone. I told myself not to pry, not to feed the gnawing suspicion clawing at my chest, but then my eyes landed on her laptop, still open on the counter, the screen glowing with an email tab. My pulse quickened. I hesitated, every lesson about respecting privacy flashing through my mind, but privacy had already been broken hers when I overheard the whispers, mine when she plotted to send me out of the country under false pretenses. I crossed the room and slid into the chair. My breath caught somewhere between fear and fury. The emails were in Spanish, long threads with a lawyer whose name I didn't recognize. My heart thudded as I scrolled. Words leapt out at me, undeniable even in their polite legal phrasing: transferencia de derechos, herencia, propiedad en las montañas, transfer of rights, inheritance, mountain property. I pressed a hand to my mouth. Uncle Robert's cabin, the place tucked into the Blue Ridge Mountains, worth more than anything else he owned, a family treasure, the kind of inheritance people dreamed about, and Serena was arranging for it to become hers alone. One message froze me cold. Necesitamos mantener a Amara fuera. El viaje al extranjero la distraerá. Firmaremos mientras ella esté ausente. We need to keep Amara out. The trip abroad will distract her. We'll sign while she's away. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. Serena didn't want to share. She wanted me gone, written out of the future, a ghost while she claimed everything. The bathroom door creaked, and I snapped the laptop shut, sliding back into my chair as if nothing had happened. My palms were slick with sweat, my heart pounding against my ribs. I forced myself to breathe evenly as Serena reappeared, her smile practiced, her tone casual. She picked up her coffee and asked about my latest project, as if she hadn't just laid the groundwork to steal the life our uncle had intended to pass on. How do you fight someone who knows your every weakness, except the one you've kept hidden that evening, while Serena scrolled through her phone in the living room? I sat across from her pretending to sketch logos in my notebook. In reality, my own phone lay on the armrest beside me, recording every word of her low Spanish murmurs. The device captured fragments mentions of documentos, meetings, and the lawyer's name I had already seen glowing on her laptop screen. Each phrase felt like a nail driven into the fragile shell of trust between us. Later, when she stepped into the kitchen to make tea, I slipped to the counter, opened her laptop again, and quickly screenshotted the emails I had discovered earlier. My fingers shook as I saved them into a hidden folder on my own device, covering my tracks carefully. I wrote down the lawyer's name on a scrap of paper, committing it to memory. The proof was there now, sitting heavy in my pocket. And yet, holding it didn't make me feel triumphant, it made me ache. I thought of Serena not as the schemer whispering in Spanish, but as the girl I grew up beside. The girl who sulked when she couldn't afford prom shoes, who snapped at me when teachers praised my work, who always felt like the world favored me while leaving her behind. Serena's life had been a string of starts that never lasted, jobs lost, debt stacked, friendships burned. I could almost hear the bitterness in her voice now, the desperation behind her plan. She wanted more than the cabin. She wanted proof that she wasn't the forgotten one, that she could finally outpace me. A pang of pity tugged at me, but I smothered it quickly. Pity wouldn't protect me when papers were signed and my name erased. For years, I had learned to bend, to soften, to forgive. But this wasn't the kind of wound you healed with kindness. Serena's smile returned as she set the tea down, her voice casual as though nothing lay beneath. I forced a steady breath, determined to match her calm. Will compassion save my sister or destroy my chance to protect myself? Serena leaned against the counter the next morning, sipping coffee with a grin that felt rehearsed. "You really should start packing, Amara," she said lightly. "Spain will be here before you know it. I even found a guidebook for you." She slid the glossy booklet across the table as if it were a thoughtful gift. I traced my fingers over the cover, careful to keep my expression neutral. Inside, my pulse thudded with the weight of what I already knew. If Serena noticed the stiffness in my smile, she didn't show it. She kept talking about flights, hotel rooms, opportunities, as though each detail was another thread meant to weave me out of my own life. I nodded, murmuring my thanks, but every word was measured, every glance restrained. Let her think I was oblivious. Let her believe I was the younger sister still chasing her approval. When she finally left for an appointment, I sat at my desk, the apartment quiet enough to hear my own breathing. I pulled out the lawyer's name I had scribbled on a scrap of paper and searched for his office. My hands trembled as I typed out a message, requesting a meeting to discuss Uncle Robert's estate. I didn't dare say too much, only enough to secure a time before Serena could act. The reply came quickly tomorrow morning. First thing, my chest tightened with both fear and relief. The very stage Serena thought she controlled would become mine. That evening, Serena chattered about the retreat again, circling back to packing lists and airport check-ins. I nodded at the right moments, hiding the storm building inside me. Every word she spoke was another reminder of the trap she thought she had set. When the trap finally closes, who will be caught inside Serena? Or me, the next morning. The law office smelled faintly of cedar and leather, the kind of place where decisions stuck for generations. Serena walked in ahead of me, her heels sharp against the polished floor. She didn't notice me at first. Her posture was confident, almost triumphant, as she greeted the receptionist and announced she was here to finalize documents regarding our uncle's estate. I waited until she was led into the conference room before following. When I stepped through the doorway, her head snapped around. The smile drained from her face, leaving only shock. "Amara," she stammered. "What are you doing here? I thought I know what you thought," I said quietly, sliding into the chair across from her. My voice was steady, though my hands trembled beneath the table. "And I know what you planned." The lawyer, a gray-haired man with a sharp gaze, looked between us. "Is there a problem?" I pulled my phone from my bag, pressing play. Serena's voice filled the room, her whispers in Spanish about keeping me out, about the retreat, about the cabin. I let it play long enough for the weight of her words to settle. Then I stopped the recording and looked at her directly. I understood every word, I said, switching effortlessly into Spanish. I repeated her phrases back to her, translating them line by line for the lawyer. She intended to send me abroad, so she could sign everything in my absence. The silence in the room thickened. Serena's mouth opened and closed, no excuses forming. The lawyer leaned back, his expression unreadable. But the shift was clear. Her story had collapsed, and the balance had tilted toward me. Serena's hands clenched in her lap, her eyes flashing with a mix of fury and disbelief. For once, she had no script to hide behind. What happens when the very language meant to erase you becomes your sharpest weapon? The moment the recordings ended, Serena's composure cracked. She leaned forward, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. Amara, I've been drowning for years. Every time you succeed, I'm left with nothing but scraps. Do you know what it's like to always be the shadow, never the chosen one?" Her words tumbled out in a rush confession tangled with accusation. She painted herself as desperate, broken by debts, weighed down by failures. For a moment, I almost saw the girl we once were, clutching my hand when the lights went out, begging me not to leave her behind. But then her tone shifted, sharp and bitter. "You had no right to snoop. You betrayed me first. You always think you're better. Maybe I wanted something for myself for once." I steadied my voice. "You didn't just want something, Serena. You wanted everything. At my expense." I laid the screenshots and printed translations before the lawyer, the evidence undeniable. The lawyer cleared his throat, his tone firm. "These actions disqualify any claim you attempted to make. Ms. Lysol, the documents are void. Amara retains her rightful share of the estate." Serena's face went pale, then red, as if the words had physically struck her. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Finally, she pushed back her chair, her eyes burning with a mixture of rage and humiliation. I sat still, hands folded, heart pounding. This was what I had fought for, not to humiliate her, but to keep from being erased. The inheritance was secure, but the space between us had never felt wider. Is victory ever sweet when it comes at the cost of blood ties? Weeks later, I unlocked the cabin door with a key that finally felt like mine. The Blue Ridge air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, and sunlight spilled across the wide porch. Inside, the cabin was bare at first, echoing wood floors, empty walls, but slowly I began to fill it with pieces of myself, bright prints from my studio, shelves lined with books I'd carried since college, soft blankets folded neatly across the couch. Each nail I hammered, each frame I hung, felt like reclaiming a part of me that had been hidden in the shadow of someone else's hunger. Serena's presence lingered only through my phone. Every day brought new messages, sharp rants accusing me of betrayal, then sudden shifts into guilt, apologies, pleas for another chance. I read them once or twice at the beginning, my chest tightening, but I never replied. Silence was my answer. The boundary I should have drawn years ago. In the evenings, I'd sit by the stone fireplace, sketchbook on my lap, listening to the quiet. For so long, I thought family meant endurance, swallowing pain to keep the bond intact. But standing in this cabin, surrounded by choices that were finally mine, I understood something different. Loyalty without respect was just a chain. Dignity mattered more. I wasn't erasing Serena, but I wasn't carrying her anymore either. I had learned her secrets, stopped her lies, and chosen my own survival. When betrayal comes from the one closest to you, is forgiveness strength, or is walking away the only way to survive?